Welcome back. Just realizing that I might have said in the last video that we were on the last video for the gap filler series, but we're not. That was the last video for the sheet that I had made there, but this is the last video in this section of gap filler videos, Basics of Modern Composition. So, we're talking about some building blocks of modern composition. What we have is melody first. Now, melody is what we call a string of single notes. This is a melody. Any kind of string of single notes, even something weird like that, as a melody. Whereas this is not a melody, it's a chord. It's a group of notes played simultaneously. A melody is a line, you could almost think of it as a horizontal line of individual notes. Harmony is the simultaneous sounding of multiple notes. Now that includes chords and it includes other structures too that sound simultaneously, like intervals are harmonies, and chords are harmonies, and clusters are harmonies. Harmony is when multiple notes sound together. Bass is basically a very low melody. That's all it is in its essence. When we play in the bass register, meaning a low register, it's still a melody. We're still playing single notes one after another. It's just very low. It's in a bass register, and usually there's some kinds of chords and melodies going on top while we're playing these bass notes down below. So we might have a chord with a bass note below it. That's a bass note, part of a bass line. If that chord were to change, we would have a bass line going on there. Still just a melody. Drums and percussion, pretty self-explanatory. They kind of hold down the rhythmic element of a track, although all of the other elements too, melody, harmony, and bass, have their rhythm component as well. Drums and percussion are purely rhythmic. They don't have pitches in them, so they're not contributing to the melody or harmony or bass line. They're just providing syncopation and groove to whatever's going on. And then we have effects and miscellaneous things. This is like in various genres, you might have risers, like big noise sweeping things, or crashes or booms or other sounds that make you feel certain things or certain textures. These things are not particularly melodies, harmonies, or bass lines, and a lot of times they're not even drums and percussion. Maybe you can call them percussion to a certain extent. They're more special effects that add to the atmosphere of the music. So maybe before we get into structure, we can think about this as sort of being arranged this way, that melody sits on top of everything in a certain sense. Harmony is the bed that melody is kind of playing around in. Harmony is providing a lot of the emotional content through the chords, which the melody dances around on top of. And underneath the chords, we are being supported by the bass line. The bass is related to the harmony. The harmony is playing kinds of chords, and the bass is reinforcing those chords by playing certain notes that are in agreement with them. Then underneath all of this, holding down the rhythmic groove aspect, we have drums and percussion, and then kind of in the background, so to speak, we have this effects and miscellaneous things that are adding to the atmosphere. This is basically what makes up any section of any modern music, whether it's a pop song, electronic song, rock song, whatever. It's going to have this collection of various elements all playing simultaneously. Going from section to section, they're made up of these things for the most part. That's how modern music really works. So now we're talking about structure. And so by structure, I mean the actual layout of a song overall. So in a lot of music, a lot of modern music, this is the kind of structure we have. 3 main sections, a verse, a chorus, and a bridge. And these sections alternate in specific ways, which we'll get into in the future. And each section is made of these elements. So the verse will have a specific melody, harmony, bass, blah, blah. So will the chorus, and so will the bridge. Usually slightly different from one another to differentiate the sections. So this is kind of a larger scale version of what's going on here. This is the building blocks, and then they're all put together, and now they're creating a pattern amongst themselves to create an arrangement or a structure. A different kind of structure might be using build-ups, drops, and breakdowns. This is for electronic music, where instead of thinking of them as verses and choruses and bridges, we instead have this sort of flow where things build up to a huge peak. There's a drop, which is kind of like the main section of the song, like a climax, a huge big bass, big drums, whatever's going on in the kind of music that it is, and then a breakdown, which is a cool down sort of section away from these things, which then leads back into another build up, into another drop, and then another breakdown usually. Another kind of structure is where a single core loop is created, meaning maybe like a 8 or 16 or 32 bar loop that goes throughout the entire song, but elements come in and out and subtle variations happen throughout the song. So the song doesn't particularly have different sections like these ones do. It's more of a single section that has variations with elements coming in and out over time. The last thing is these intros and outros. This can be applied to any of these different structures: an introduction, and then there's no word called outroduction. There's not actually even a word called outros, but this is what we call it, an ending, you could say. This could be its own unique section, or it could be one of these sections, but maybe missing a few elements to kind of introduce you to the song. So it could be the verse, but it doesn't have a melody, and it doesn't have bass, and it doesn't have drums. It could just be the harmony from the verse, or from the bridge or the chorus or whatever, which builds into the rest of the song. Same with the outro. It could be its own unique section, or it could just be one of the other sections missing some elements or a variation of it. The end. That's it. Short video on this basics of composition. So that ends our whole gap filler video series here. It's important that you really take time to understand everything that I talked about through these videos. If you already understand it all, that's awesome. Definitely move on to the next video right now. If not, take your time. Take these days, take this week, take whatever you need to really comprehend all these things, how they slot together, how the notes work together, what rhythm is, what the number system is, all this stuff, because we are going to build on these fundamentals. Okay, thanks for that, and I'll see you in the next video.